No problem.
Come on through, Denise.
All right.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I've never seen that.
Got it, 7 seconds away. Oh, okay. They had crushed asphalt down there. Fires. I think they had that 8 months. But it had put it out pretty good. Time's about to that is He's got our
Everything should be ready to go.
It's good to be, but it's good to go. Exactly. And we came home yesterday, very disappointed. The weather was better yesterday.
steps for you yet, so you can get up and down the bleachers.
I'm gonna have to go up the other way.
Extend that press box.
It's separate.
Well, it's,
I don't even know why it was.
That was over engineering, somebody thought too much about that.
of course,
Nope, I didn't even see it.
how many people do we have there like me that can't do that?
Well, but then even so, like you put it in the middle of the way. Even those coaches, don't worry about it, halftime, they gotta climb over the
Yes.
What's Tracy doing?
I don't know.
Said he had to check on something.
I was looking at it for different format.
All right.
Under additions to and/or approval of the agenda, if you've noticed, I was a little bit late coming in here. I went to double check, as I usually do, my copy against the copy in the window, because I'm old school. There was no copy in the window. And I'm bringing that up as a point. My suggestion is at this time that we can approve the agenda and move forward. The other option is we would have to postpone the meeting and have a 24-hour post on the window. I put it before the council.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second.
Motion by Brock, seconded by Chad. All right. Visitors to be heard guidelines. I had it printed up on me. One of the things that happens when I go up to Minneapolis is I've got a stepfather that was on city council for Rochester for a long time, and my mother. So comparing it off, as I would came apparent to me that I should read off. Comments may last no longer than 2 minutes. Comments must comply with the following rules on order and decorum. While the city council is in session, all persons shall preserve order and decorum. Any person that refuses to abide by these rules shall be asked to leave the council chambers. Further refusal may require the mayor or presiding officer to request removal. Every member of the public, the city council, and the city staff shall address the mayor or presiding officer with their comments and shall confine their comments to the question under debate. Comments that include indecorous language or language that is in poor taste will be ruled out of order by the mayor or presiding officer. Further indecorous language may result in removal from the chambers or other actions as deemed necessary to maintain order and decorum. All right, now city guidelines to be heard. Anybody that wants to be heard or address the council. So be it, and we'll move on to the next one. Minutes of August 26th, 2019 regular meeting and September 4th, 2019 special meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Jackson, seconded by Billy. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Claims.
Motion to approve claims.
Motion to approve, seconded by Brock. Discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Claim number 20. Cell Energy. The, it looks to be description wastewater treatment facility blower house.
No, it should be electricity. It's for all. Is that, I'm sorry, which one are you looking at?
Excel Energy, claim number 20. There's a bunch of different line items on there for different facilities.
The line item for the blower house.
The line item for the blower house of $4,127.81. Is that normal? I don't remember seeing that.
No, I would bet that's supposed to be in our machinery equipment.
No, not for
Repairs and
Excel.
maintenance.
Excel is,
Yes, so.
Okay,
And that's,
I would suggest, I'm not gonna, let's remove this claim then. Is that all right?
Until we can look into it.
So we can look into it, because that seems like a excessive amount for one month's electricity.
right. And then maybe let me see it for just a minute. I got, maybe it got
Thank you.
miscoded.
See, there's a claim here for Brian Lathrop. Who is Brian Lathrop?
That is our, streets, the newest streets, maintenance guy.
the guy we hired, the one that we just brought on
Mm-hmm.
a month or two ago.
Right, yep.
And this bill for $400 for Seam Designs.
That is for clothing. It was, shirts, like the yellow,
High
See, the
vis
same-
shirts and city staff.
yeah,
Correct.
and some, sweatshirts for this winter,
High vis sweatshirt.
yes.
Any further discussion or questions by the council? Go with the roll call vote for approval. Billy?
Aye.
Chad Wolf?
Aye.
Chad Riley?
Aye.
Jackson?
All right?
Rob Robs?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
So we're not,
All right, city administrator under reports. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the agenda, just as a clarification, it was posted online. Our policy and is required of us to post it on the publicly available on our building somewhere. That obviously didn't happen, so that's certainly on us. Just have a brief report tonight on a number of issues here. Countryside Edition, the feasibility study is complete and has been reviewed by staff. As you know, we passed a resolution allowing Lincoln County to create a TIF district in our municipal boundaries at the last regular meeting. The TIF request has been submitted to Lincoln County for their consideration. We hope to have it in front of planning and zoning as soon as possible, followed by consideration by full county commissioners. I have not heard back yet from Toby at Lincoln County on when that might be. I would imagine he's digging through that feasibility study right now and making recommendations on it. City Council audio and video, as most of you know by now, the City Council audio and video project is complete. Our first broadcasted meeting occurred on the 4th, and we expect all council, city planning and zoning commission, I would also like park and rec board meetings and committee meetings to be broadcasted live on YouTube, as well as available for viewing after each meeting. On the Rebel site, I think the plans there are going well. I've spoken to the state of South Dakota. They're aware of our plan and is pleased with the video monitoring capability plans we have. We have ordered new signs. The proofs of those just came in today. We hope to have those up by the end of the month. The security system is going to take some work. So we did talk to the company that wired our security system here at City Hall and asked them to take a look at what we can do out there as well. The topography and some of the view angles and those kinds of things create a challenge for seeing license plates. We can get vehicle descriptions, we believe. So we're looking into some options there as well. Wastewater treatment facility open house. May not sound like the most enjoyable way to spend a fall afternoon, but the sewer and water team is planning on hosting an open house at the wastewater treatment plant this month. it's a great opportunity to educate anyone who is interested on what happens on any given day at the plant, learn about some of the challenges we experience there, such as I&I, as well as a little about the complicated chemistry and operations at the plant. We had hoped to do this early in September. We're pushing that back a few weeks. Policies and procedures. Police department has completed their first draft of policies and procedures. I'm currently reviewing that and hope to have a final copy available for consideration in October. We'll also be starting on the public works and finance policies and procedures soon, and hope to have those ready for consideration this fall. Lennox 2035, talked about that plan a few weeks back. We'll be finalizing some SMART goals and benchmarks to achieve on that plan, as well as a few guideposts to keep us on track for achieving those benchmarks.
Regarding that countryside edition, I've had 3 people ask me outside the city about when lots will be available up there. Do you have an update as to when that will, or the process, is that? And I told them I'd ask, I didn't.
Yeah, in order for that to happen, that purchase has to happen first. The land has to change hands to the developer. I would imagine that he's going to want to replat before he sells specific lots. What we have there now is probably not the thing he's going to end up using. I have heard kind of secondhand that people are lining up for spots. So I think if folks are interested, it may not hurt to be in touch with Nielsen Construction and express some interest.
Okay. Motion to approve report?
Second by Brock, Sam, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Engineers report.
Okay, thank you.
Finance.
What's that?
Finance.
Finance,
Yep.
yeah, sorry. They both start with the same letter. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay, and I did put out the cash report and the revenue and expenditures. Kind of gave a narrative of what I thought. Did anybody have any questions about that?
These are, I thank you, number one, for the work that you do on this.
Yes.
I mean, I've been on council for 2.5 years, and we're finally starting to get a very clear picture of what can actually be, you know, from the revenues to the expenditures. And I know it's been a lot of work, and it takes some time to do that, but, you know, I thank you so much for your efforts with that.
You're welcome.
I'd echo that. It's much clearer to me now, too.
Good.
And I feel a lot better when I read through that I can understand where we're going.
If I could add just one quick note, something that we noticed this afternoon. The last department, second to last department report on in that expense revenue report, the ambulance. Our loss, and I mentioned this to a couple other folks, and Alan has his ideas for what could be causing this, and I think we just need to look further into it. But our loss in that department so far this year is less than $8,000. Now most years we end up with a loss of around $30,000 from what I can see. So we're not sure if, you know, as Alan suggests, it may be because we're tracking claims a little bit closer between the finance office and our claims processor, but it's clearly on the revenue side. So we're trying to figure out what that might be contributing to that.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded? Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Now we go to the engineers report.
Thanks, Mary. Good evening, everyone. Start off with Central Basin Project Phase 2 of our report. Construction continues out there. Progress, I'd say, has been slow a little bit the last few weeks, especially with today with the rain and whatnot. We've had some private utility conflicts that have slowed the contractor down on that Phase 1, but they're out of the way now between Mid-American and Bass. They relocated those facilities that were in conflict, and now the contractor kind of has that site back in their hands. So as soon as things dry out, they're going to keep working on the dirt work out there and get gravel in place so that we can get access back to those folks. as far as phase 2 goes, it's kind of in a similar situation. All the utility works is done, and as soon as they're done with the dirt work on phase 1, they're gonna head up and do the dirt work on phase 4, and progress with gravel and final base on that stretch as well. You can see we updated the schedule just based on the schedules that the contractor's been giving us. If you notice, we have labeled phase 4, which is 3rd Avenue from Elm to Main. We're starting to talk with the contractor about pushing that into next spring, because we just feel that time's running out for them to get to that phase, and we don't want them opening it up. We're getting to that point where if they open it up, it's gonna be hard to get it put back together. So we're starting to have those conversations with the contractor, and we just wanted to let you folks know that we're probably heading in that direction right now. With that, I guess we have a pay app later on in the agenda. I can take any questions on Central Basin.
You know when they'll asphalt phase 1?
They're late September is what their last schedule said.
Okay.
Make sure they're laying asphalt in 2 phases or no?
If they, yes, they would like to come and do 5th and Elm in one shot, you know, and if 4th Avenue happens to be ready for them, then I'm sure we'll pave that too. But we don't want them necessarily waiting for 4th Avenue to get ready, so we're gonna require them to come and get those 2 blocks done. Any other questions?
Asphalt repair project, how's that going?
Yeah, we kind of still, I'll get to that one, I guess. Can I go to the Central Basin Phase 3 quick? Just on that project, we're in design mode. We're planning to have the plans done, or we did in December. So we've got people working on that project right now as well. We're hoping in a week or 2 that we'll have some layouts for the city to start looking at and getting closer to having that project ready as well.
So are they gonna start that project next year?
Yeah, so if this project is pushed into next year with phase 3, we're gonna have to have our contractor on next year's project probably wait until, we might have a start date of July or something like that before they can start that work. But we're gonna be working through that as we,
How many blocks, is that a bigger project, smaller?
it's smaller than this year's. So, but we'll be I know where you're heading with that, we'll be working through the schedule and making sure that we got enough time to do that project as well in the year. The asphalt repair project, there's an exhibit there in the report that shows all the areas that are scheduled to get repaired. They've currently got 5th Avenue labeled as 1, and Boynton Avenue 2 and 4 actually, both of those are tore out. And Rummel Street number 3 is opened up, and those areas they're expecting to pave those back this week. They just started taking out number 7, Cedar Street. So they're already doing this a little bit out of sequence from what this exhibit shows. But once they get 7 with Cedar Street done, they're gonna go to Lincoln Street. We want them to get to that stretch because Lincoln Street over there, if you go out there and look at it, the streets, we're taking out the worst of it, but the adjacent pavement next to it is still in pretty tough shape. So we wanna make sure we don't have any issues with them getting in and out of there and wrecking anything beyond what the construction limits are. So that's why I wanted to get them to get to that stretch next. Okay, and then from there, they'll work to 1st Avenue, and then Academy Street will be the last one. Everything's been going pretty well there. When they opened up Boynton Avenue in front of Sunshine, they found that the ground was really saturated underneath there, and it was unstable. We talked to the contractor about doing some additional work there with some surge rock and fabric, and so we brought that to the city's attention, and we had that on the agenda tonight as a change order number 1 to bring in that additional surge rock just to strengthen that area up, because it really needed it. So that's later on in the agenda as well.
Tell me about the surge rock and how that specifically shores it out so it makes it more stable.
The surge rock is just a bigger ballast rock, sometimes we'll call it. Might be 3 to 4 inch type crushed rock. And a lot of times if you have a wet area and you just throw gravel in there, that gravel just goes into the mud and just kind of gets beat further into the mud, and no matter how hard you try to compact it, I guess. The surge rock just locks up a lot better, and it stays stable down in the bottom of that trench. We had pretty good luck with it when we put in, a foot to 8 inches to a foot, and it seems to be able to bridge a lot of some of the worst areas that we've seen on projects, I guess. That's kind of how it works. And then we combined out with the fabric too, a geotextile fabric stuff right here.
So by using that in certain spots on that road, is it gonna cause the spots that don't have it to fail faster?
No, it won't impact the roads adjacent to it, but
But I'm saying, point, the part that we're not fixing,
yeah, obviously that hasn't had any type of repair or anything, so it's, I mean,
it's gonna fail.
Well, your next freeze thaw, it'd be, this will probably hold up, but something else on, well, pick
Well, 'cause
pick a
if you look
street.
But if you look on here, I mean, there's little patches that aren't,
yeah.
I mean, in between, there must have been some bad and some
Those were the areas that are blown out and failed completely, and so, you know, funds were limited, so we directed to patch back what the worst areas.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what those areas in between are gonna do in the future. I mean, they might be fine next year, you might find some areas that are gonna, blow out on you that we don't even know about yet, I guess. It just depends on the weather that we get and the conditions that we have during the spring. Okay.
Yeah.
Highway 44 rec trail, we're still working with the contractor on some punch list items there, hoping to get addressed in the next couple of weeks. Countryside Edition, we really haven't had anything beyond, or for a while, I guess, and city staff's been working on the tip district with the belt and whatnot, so nothing new to report there. Let's see. On the force account side, you can see we have some projects labeled there. The major one just being the 2019 asphalt repair project. Any questions on the report?
Move to approve. Motion by Chadwell, second by Billy. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it. Evidence report.
Good evening, Council. In your package, you should have a lot of the documents that you normally see. I also threw a couple extras in this time, put a couple of bar graphs on there, just showing month-to-month comparisons from the last few years and also a year-to-year comparison. On that year-to-year comparison, you'll see a projected number on there. That's just simple multiplication and division, trying to figure out where we're gonna be. It's projected because we could have, anywhere off of that, just a call volume, but. Last month we were down just a little bit from what our average has been, but our trend is still upwards, so we're still planning to be up for the year. One other thing we've started doing is we started handing out surveys with each of our patients, just so we can see where we can do better with each patient. So,
How's that working out?
we're getting the feedback, but like any survey you hand out, there's no incentive for it. I'm not going to give you anything for filling it out. So we get some back, we don't get them all back, but most of them are coming back very, very good.
Okay, good. Are they available to look at if we would?
With me taking off some patient information, yes.
Yes, that's appropriate.
But I have them all in a binder in my office, so.
So I'm seeing projected in 2019, 453 from 337 from 2015.
Yep.
How many cities and townships do you serve?
10 townships and 3 cities, 3 communities.
And that's both here in Lincoln and some in Turner, correct?
Yes. Yep.
That's all I have. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
Sam Jackson.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
very much. We are down to ordinance.
Is there no,
We need to vote on that motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you.
is there no report from Jeremy Gilbronson tonight?
No, Jeremy is at the Public Works Conference in Seattle this week. He'll report out next week.
Can I just interject quick? It's not showing on YouTube. They
Uh,
say it's,
I got the same feedback, but I'm watching it right now, so I'm not sure what the issue may be.
Okay. I just wanted to
It's good, thank you. Ordinance 595, membership qualifications. My notes show that this was requested to be redone as the first reading. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Since the first, or excuse me, we had the second reading at the last meeting. There's some feedback in terms of whether or not the wording we had in the original draft would have allowed individuals who simply reside in Lennox. So we clarified that by adding own property or reside in Lennox.
There's some discussion, good discussion last time. Anybody have any discussion on this first reading? Okay. I declare it the first reading done. Ordinance 598, zoning penalties. Correct, second reading.
Yes, this is a second reading. Before we get to that, Mr. Mayor, I would like to reply back with the video should be live now. There was one minor glitch that I picked up, so we should be good to go now. Ordinance 598, zoning penalties. This ordinance was crafted again at the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Current penalty available for zoning violations is $500 per day. That's available to all zoning violations regardless of the offense. The severity of the penalty does not appear to be in line with smaller offenses such as failing to obtain a permit prior to commencing the work. This violation has to be the most frequent we encounter, and I concur with the commission in that a penalty for these violations should help prevent future violations. So recommend approval of the second reading.
To me, this is part of the process of determining accountability and such within the community. We had a pretty good discussion last time about the differences between the two. Is there any further discussion to be had? Okay. I need a motion to approve. So moved. Chad Riley?
Second.
I'll give it to Billy. All right, motion by, then we'll go, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Fire department discussion. This is one that I worked on and trying how to get it up and appropriate and opened up. Wayne, kind of help you, I had some quick questions just to make sure I'm correct on some things. You are a 501c3 organization, nonprofit, correct?
That is correct.
And just kind of run down for people what that means.
And I am not the expert on that. Micah Strasser, our treasurer, has gone through all that work over the last,
Okay.
probably almost 16 months. And I would need to defer that to him. I cannot speak
No problem.
respectfully on that, so.
No problem. And I could wait to ask Mike too about the 990, because that's a new term for me to kind of learn, and I've been trying to educate myself on it.
And I cannot speak educated on that.
No problem.
We will gladly sit down and address it, but I need the expert there to
Yeah.
be there to talk with us on that too, so.
I run into the same thing all the time, so. All right. That kind of answered the basics that I had. There was a talk about sitting down as a work group, and so that I know I was gone for the weekend, so I'm a little bit behind in catching up. I believe you talked with Brock about that too. How would you best want to handle this?
We're open for discussion almost any time. And I know Brock and I talked this weekend and then again today. We were looking at trying to do it tomorrow night, if possible, if we could. But we are committed to our training night on the second Tuesday of the month, and I do not want to take that away and not be a part of that. So I have spoken to the guys. We had a meeting just prior to this, and I I have spoken to the guys, and we could meet Wednesday night, would probably be about the most convenient time for to have the proper amount of people there. So, and how would we, who would you want to meet, and how would we want to meet, or how would you want to do it?
Well, it sounds like Micah would be a good part to have on to educate me about some of the ins and outs about stuff I don't know about.
Sure.
And I think we would have somebody from the finance committee,
Couple from police and fire.
a couple from the police and fire, because we don't have a quorum there, our city administrator and our mayor.
I'd ask like Brock, you'd be present because you kind of opened up this conversation.
Well, the issue is I've got to go out, I got to go to Rapid for work the next 3 days. But I'm not against calling in either, and if that works out, that can.
Okay, if it's Brock, then Chad is the chair, probably Sam. If we're having a couple with that. Finance committee, we still have Chad Wolf, Brock, and Billy.
Sounds like Brock.
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
Yep,
We
that
can't
sounds
have
good.
more than 3. What time are you thinking? Do you have a?
Typically, our meetings are, like our training meetings are at 6:30, and typically we can get our members there at that time. So anywhere from 6:30 on would work probably best for our members. What works best for you guys, we're open for that.
My evenings are really open, so.
Whatever works best, I'll be out and I can call whenever.
Let's do 6:30 Wednesday here.
You can be around then, Brock?
I'll get a call in.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
That works for you guys here.
Sure, yeah, we'll plan on that, I'll try to get the proper one of days. If not, I'll try to get the correct answers that you guys are looking for. So kind of looking for questions that will be generated, what are we looking at? And,
My big things are just finding out about the nonprofit stuff. I'm gonna fight like yourself. I want to learn some more about that. Just looking at going through, what I look at is where we drew our conclusions from in the state, local, and federal people that I've been looking at for what we're requesting. And I would just like to find out if you guys have anything from fire, or, you know, you got your state and national, or some of that stuff to support. So we have a good conversation about, what worked really well for me is when you and I sat down and we said, well, we gotta call the expert.
well, absolutely.
Yeah, so I want as many outside experts or people out there that can give qualified answers that I might not know, or I think I know, and they come back and they say, no, this is the way it works, so.
Yeah, and that is where I'm at right now with the 503C, because I'm not the expert in that.
Nope.
And Mike, I'm not saying he's the expert, but he is our expert because he's done a lot of groundwork with that.
You have Nardell working with you, correct?
We have worked with Ordinance, yes, that is correct.
He seems to me to be a very bright person too, so if you wanted to bring him along with, or I wouldn't mind to hear him speaking for the council, but if he needs to be paid to be there, he knows a lot of stuff I don't know, I already know. You know, so he might be one to draw in there too, just because Nardell is one that helped me out too, just to do that, so. And I'm looking at from people that help me understand things. Sure. So that could be one to have in there. If it's short notice though.
Yeah, it is, and we certainly have, Mike has always been our contact person with Ordinance, and I can have him make that contact. If you don't mind real quick, I'll turn around and look. I don't believe I have our 503 federal signed paper with us, but if I do, we certainly could have a copy of it.
This meeting would be more than enough time to do that, yeah. The next meeting too, I don't mind either way.
So with the upcoming meeting that we are planning, is it gonna be appropriate to sit down with my members that I bring in, and are we gonna have a one-on-one conversation with anybody that wants to have that discussion?
I see it as just having open dialogue between
Yeah.
questions that either the finance committee has or the fire committee has, and then questions that you've got regarding of us. You know, one of the questions I want to know is, you know, over the last 3 years, the number of grants that you've applied for, Typically you get a score back on those and some feedback as why you weren't funded.
Sure.
And if that was done, then just to see what those comments are. I mean, I work in the grant world a little bit, okay, and understand a little bit of 501c3 and the status of that. And you've got to file a 990 every year. I mean, that's part of the process. And what red flagged me just early on is someone had said you had lost your 501c3 standing for a failure of a 990, not providing a 990. And so that's why I just want to know if that happened, how long was it? If you lose your 990 or that status, then you have to reapply to get it back.
Sure.
And I don't know if that was true, not true, or
Sure.
so.
And I'd have to have Micah here, and we can go through, he's got all the correspondence, emails that took place with, and I believe it was with some of the federal people that he was talking with the IRS. But I can speak quite honestly on our side of that. Until last year, when we received a very generous and gracious grant from the Elroy and Roselle Oltman's family, we did not realize that through that grant that we were not in compliance of the 503. So immediately when we found out that, we began the process in this application. So you are correct when you go back and say there has been no 990 filed for 3 years, but we have rectified that. And my belief is, and I gotta work with Micah, I'm not gonna say this verbatim, that the IRS is okay with how we are operating with this.
Right. Because when you ask, and just in the grant world, if you were a 501c3, just for explanation, if you're a 501c3 nonprofit business, and this goes across the board, you open yourself up for there's just more opportunities to secure funding as a nonprofit, which is very obviously quite beneficial. If you don't have the status, then some of these grants that are available, you don't qualify for because of not being that designation. And I didn't know where that was or where you stood currently on that status.
Okay, and that is what has brought us to this point in that subject matter, so there's no doubt about it. So, and as far as I know now, we are within compliance. It's nice to know that I may use you as a reference point when we come to some of these things.
Sure.
And as far as the grants go, I've got here documentation that we've been doing grants. I think it goes back to 2004. Our largest grant that we received was for 16 self-contained breathing apparatus through Homeland Security, the Office of Domestic Preparedness, and the Emergency Management offices. And that was in 2004 when we received that grant. The rest of these grants in here, some of them are the Assistance to Fire Act grant that FEMA has applied, or we've addressed with FEMA. One of them was as current as last year, which I got to about that 90% mark, and then I didn't get it done.
Yeah.
I didn't get it done.
Well,
And
some of
it
them-
was not by the lack of expertise.
Some of these
It was
they're
right.
monsters. I mean, they're big. They're a lot of work. And if we can offer some kind of assistance to help you do that, we want to be able to do that. Because anytime we can find grant dollars, then we don't have to use city dollars to supplement anything, regardless of department. So,
Yeah. And quite frankly, as you said, they are, and that one was very difficult to navigate. Now, my understanding is that FEMA with this grant is supposed to be streamlining this program for this year. I received an email, I believe I forwarded it to the city administrator. So hopefully that grant process will be an easier thing for us to do.
and since I've looked, just at these FEMA grants, it looks like they open up every September. It seems to be like the opening, so it's coming up, whatever,
Yeah.
it's close.
Yeah, but they have not released the grants from last year yet. And typically in the past, those grants have been released to the fire services, and then the grant application has opened up, is what I've noticed.
So what grants do you think you'll get from last year that you haven't received any yet?
From last year, we have no grants that are coming in. We did write the volunteer fire assistance grant with the state of South Dakota and the Department of Forestry.
And did they give you a reason why you didn't get it?
Well, we did receive that.
You did
However, the paperwork was not turned in. And fortunately, the person from the forestry called us and we scrambled very quickly, and we had kept our copies for it and got everything to Casey with the Forestry Service. and then I believe Denise, the city, received that check. And that should have been $4,000.
It was
Just
39
under
something.
Okay, yeah, I didn't quite hit the full
Yep,
mark.
yep.
You're correct, yeah.
So we got $3,900 last year in grant dollars for the fire department.
Correct, yeah, and that was wrote by us, the fire assistance, the volunteer assistance grant from the state.
Do you want help writing your grants? If we
It's
have
possible.
If we have some,
Do we have, in a job description, do we have people who are grant writers?
well, we have people who have experience writing grants.
Sure.
That I've been in a meeting with you where they've offered to help you and just asked for you to provide
Sure.
the technical and all the information they need, technical or financial.
Yep,
And my understanding is that none of that has been received yet.
and I don't know where that comment's coming from, because I have not denied anybody access to that technical expertise and the numbers that we need available for
I
those
think
grants.
some of this can be handled by just sitting
Yeah.
down on the face-to-face and having that done, because there's gotta be, I think the discussion is gonna be healthy for both parties to just,
Sure.
to go that. Wayne, I wanna thank you so much for coming up here and addressing the council and for working with us to try to get this resolved.
Sure, and I still have the floor, correct? I can
You
still-
do.
I can still speak. So, and with that being said, the fire department is not just a city fire department. We are the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department Incorporation, and we serve the community, our rural neighbors, and the city citizens also. So last year, we wrote the grant for the fire assistance grant from the state on behalf of the city. This year, we wrote and received the grant for the fire assistance grant on behalf of the incorporation. Last year, it was for supply hose, 5-inch supply hose, which we hook to the fire hydrant and can be utilized for either attack or supply. This year, we wrote it for our drop tanks that we use for our tanker tenders to carry water. And we did receive that grant also from the state. Not only was it for the drop tanks, it was for the updated fire shelters for wildland firefighting and updated the gear for firefighters to wear in wildland firefighting. So we have received that grant. And we do have one other grant that's out there right now, and today I did receive word that we received that grant. But until I speak with that organization personally, I don't want to put that out there. But we do have another grant that's coming, so.
And what will that grant be used for?
That is gonna be to aid on the other side of this grant that we wrote for the incorporation. So we'll receive $4,000 from the state out of the 90, and don't quote me on this, please, but I believe it was like $9,300 of equipment that we wrote for. So $4,000 is coming back from the state for that to the incorporation equipment fund. And then I believe, my understanding is, and the other grant that we wrote is to try to cover anywhere we can, from zero to the 5,000 some dollars, whatever's gonna be available.
That's what this other grant is?
That's what the other grant is, yeah. So, and that's specifically how I wrote it too. Whatever help we can get, we're gonna be thankful for, we're gracious for it. So, and I will make contact with that organization yet either tonight or right away in the morning, so that information can be out there.
And since you said, I just have one more question.
Yeah.
You said that you serve both the city and the townships around.
Correct.
What percentage of your budget would you say is provided by the city?
Which budget? The one that we
Your total
propose,
budget.
or the
Your
one we
total-
propose, or the ones that we
The total
receive?
budget.
So in which year?
Whatever dollars out you have going out, what percentage comes from the city?
I can't speak specifically. The larger share, no doubt about it, is from the city of Lennox.
A larger share, 55%,
It's-
75%?
I would say it's above 75%. And without doing any specific figures, and I will not attest to it that is the number either. But I would say it's that or higher, quite honestly. So,
That would be something that we can look into. The other part is I asked the ambulance how many townships and cities that you serve in, and you serve more than just Lennox. Do you know how many townships and that besides Lennox you serve? I don't need the answer today, but I just something to follow up with.
And don't hold me to this number. Well, I believe we have 72 sections that we serve. Does any of my members here remember what our sections are that we serve?
It's gotta be pretty close.
So, and I believe that's what it is, real close to that, so.
Because this is new to me, what is a section?
It's a 1 mile by 1 mile, it's considered a section.
So you have the city of Lennox plus 72 sections.
The city of
Or
Lennox.
the city of Lennox
is in
one
that
section.
It's in that section. It's part of the Perry Township.
Okay, good. It helps me get a picture.
In terms of legislative statute, there's a statute in regard to fire protection contracts from townships that says townships must get into a contract with some type of fire protection corporation legally, and it's a law. Do you have contracts with the townships, or does the I guess I'm asking, does that fall on the township to come to you for fire protection? Or do you go to them and say, look, we need X amount of dollars per, it sounds like it's on the township to cover.
Right.
Do they come to you for that protection, or how do they get, or is there a contract with the township?
No, there is not a contract with the township. In the past, typically when we need to replace a large item, and typically it's gonna be the fire truck. So the last time we approached the board of the townships was probably 1995, 96, because the rural pumper is in 1997. So we do not have a contract with the townships. I did look for that law, because I thought in the past that I had read that, and I could not find that. Is that?
Well, I've got it, it's 8-9-4,
Okay.
and I can get you a copy of it.
Absolutely.
And I'm just, what it says here is the townships must have a contract
Yeah, yeah.
with their, whatever fire departments that's gonna come out and put a fire out on a farm or acres or whatever. And it's either on them, or I don't think it's on you to go get that, but that's, and if they don't, I don't know the legalities of that, but it says that they should, according to this, according to the statute.
Yeah, but I believe we are in compliance because we serve all of our townships that we represent. And I believe it's, Earl, would you help me out if you can? Perry, Delaware, Grant is our townships that we service. So, and all of them are available. We have service available for all of them. So,
But you don't have a contract with any of them.
we do not have a contract with anybody. So, and I would like to get a copy of that law because many years ago when I was very versed, or when I was in the fire chief's position at the first time, I had that available to me and I could not rediscover that. The only thing we could rediscover here recently was it stated, and I'm paraphrasing, that townships, county, or cities may provide fire protection. And I'd have to go back and re-look at that law. Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's not specific language to each political subdivision. If I remember it, the language you're referencing has to do with whether they provide their own under their municipal charter.
Okay,
So they have the option of whether they do that under a charter, like, you know, a full-time department would do, or whether they do that in other ways.
Sure.
You know, and obviously a volunteer fire department or a fire district is those other ways. I'd have to look up what that specific chapter refers to though, to be sure.
sure, yeah, and I would be more than willing, and I would enjoy to be in that conversation because it's very pertinent. You know, 122 years ago when the fire department started, the only thing you needed was a leather bucket painted right on the side of your house. And over the years, we've evolved to this point, including all the governance and the laws and the regulations that come, and the standards that come with it. And we want to be here for another 122 years, but we want to be a viable, beneficial part of this community also. So, and with that being said, I would definitely like to look into that a little bit more closer. I do know with, on the west part of Sioux Falls in Minnehaha County, Wayne Township, that used to be a fire department, Wayne Township Fire Department. They dissolved. Once they dissolved, they did contract with the city of Sioux Falls. The monetary value, I could guess, because I've heard the number before, but I'm not gonna recite it because I'm not accurate on it. But I believe now, instead of contracting with the city of Sioux Falls, now Wayne Township is contracting with Hartford Fire and Rescue. So there are different avenues where fire departments can go to be a fire department, so.
Just a question, Wayne,
Yeah.
because I don't know, when you refer to contracting, using that way, do they contract in a township, like so many dollars per section they pay some, or per resident, you know what that is?
And that I do not know,
Okay.
I cannot speak how they contract with each one of these.
Well, do you guys collect money for your townships every year?
There are some townships that donate to us at the corporation, and in 1997, we tried to set up a policy so that we could replace our rural pumper two, without having to overburden the townships. So we have begun an account that's called a rural pumper two account, and occasionally we do get money from the township, and that's earmarked and goes straight into the pumper two account.
So every year you don't go out and collect so much per section for the
No.
townships?
No.
And I would say it's gotta be on the township. I mean, per this statute, it sounds like the township has to come into a contract negotiation with whatever, it could be a municipal fire department, it could be a volunteer fire department, doesn't matter, but it's on the township to come and say, look, if we have a fire out here, you're gonna come put us out, right? Yep, well, what's that gonna cost? And you guys can say, it's gonna be absolutely free, you want to, but in terms of the contract, it can't be longer than 10 years, but it
Well,
says.
because I've talked to some other volunteer fire departments that contract through townships, and they're getting like $200 a section,
Okay.
$210 a section every year from these townships.
Sure.
So
Yep.
that's why I was asking.
Oh, absolutely. No, this is great. Fire and happy. I'm all fired up about answering questions and making this better. There's no doubt about it.
That specific statute, Mr. Roth, refers only to townships. So that,
Right.
in my mind, you're correct, that would put the burden on the township to enter into that agreement, but would certainly benefit the fire department financially.
Yeah.
And another funding source that I've discovered, do you receive an ISO rebate?
There is an insurance premium tax rebate that comes back to the fire department specifically, yes.
Okay. Roughly, how much do you receive? a year
And
from
with
that?
Turner County and Lincoln County, because we do serve part of a few townships, or a few sections in Turner County. Roughly, we're probably looking at around that 13,000 mark that comes back to the insurance tax rebate.
A year.
A year, yes, that's correct.
The majority of it comes from, I would assume, the municipality of Lennox,
And
just
that
because
may-
there's more people.
You're probably correct, because our ISO rating with the city of Lennox currently is a 4, and our ISO rating on the rural side is different than that.
It's probably a 9 or an 8.
And I don't know for sure what.
It's based off distance from fire department, what kind of fire department you have.
Sure.
I mean, usually rural areas are 8s or 9s,
Okay, yeah.
as long as it's not a 10.
Yeah. And we just,
Ten's bad.
and we are in the process of going through our reevaluation with the ISO. And I talked with both those representatives that were here in August, this afternoon on it. And part of the ISO in Lennox, the adjoining residents close to town, their ISO number may change. You'll have a letter in front of it, is my understanding, but because it's not part of the municipality, but they're close enough to establish water supplies. And with that also, the gentleman brought to us the program where we could help improve our rural neighbors if it's called a 5-minute drill. We just simply had to have our firefighters put down a drop tank, fill it full of water, go through the priming system of the truck, and put out 250 gallons per minute on the backside. You got 5 minutes to do that. Our guys did it with under 2 minutes, so that was outstanding. From that point also, we've got a member who is going through and contacting all our neighboring fire services. Because we have also with that is then the fill time back to the tankers. How do you fill it? How quickly can they dump it? So that work has been in progress for that also. Now, when we talked about the drop tanks, which are typically used in the rural setting, and there are occasions where it could happen in Lennox, We've got, by the Second Reformed Church, that's an older water main system that goes through there. Quite honestly, if we get a large fire out there, we're gonna probably either do one of two things. We're either gonna start relay pumping from a very strong hydrant, and which I believe we'd have the capability to do with the amount of 5-inch hose that we have if we go back basically to Main Street and then take it down Highway 44. Or we will set up a water shuttle. And then those drop tanks that we purchased now this year, right, they are replacement for our smaller ones and older ones that are getting wore out. That could be part of that scenario, that response. So this is great. Keep coming.
Well, and I don't mean to belabor the, I mean, this is something we can get more into the weeds on with the, obviously, in more open dialogue with the committee, in terms of like overhead costs, turnout gear, how often do you rotate that through, SCADAs, how often do you rotate those through? On your roster, you've got 27 individuals. Can all of them go into it? Do you think all of them are fit enough to go into a fire?
We're at 28, and it may be, I may have given you that misinformation,
Right.
because I just did our dance letter today, and I counted 28, and I'm
Sure.
going, I thought we were at 27, so I had to double, but we are at 28,
Okay.
so I'm gonna correct it.
And just, questions like that, we don't have to necessarily spend the time here to do that, but.
And are all of them 100% fit to go in? It's probably, I don't know each individual. I'm almost 60 years old. Can I go in and still fight fire like I did when I was 26 years old? There's no way that I can. Could I go in there and operate for an extended period of time for my age and my abilities? I do believe I can. But it takes all facets of members of the fire service.
Sure.
From the guy that's 21 years old and only has 3 or 4 months on, to the person that we have on that has 48 years on. It is still a valuable asset to our
I
fire.
think the age, I mean, not only the physical prowess of an individual in their youth, but what you add, number one, is experience, and number two, there's just different skill sets that come with, as you get older in terms of the wisdom and everything else. Totally 100% agree with that.
Sure, because there are areas where we need the people who can be physically, agility active to do that type of response, because we never know what we're gonna go into. But we also need the people on the outside for the command structure. And that's typically what that happens is it's the older people.
When you go to a fire like that, and you've got those sitting in the truck, are they all in turnout gear?
The drivers are not.
They're not, okay.
No, because the size of the boots can be a hindrance and a safety issue if they need to drive the trucks.
Sure.
So especially our tankers, if our tankers are moving back and forth on the roads, they can, if they're comfortable with it, that's fine.
And you think about $2,000 for turnout gear per fireman? Is that high, low?
No, we were 3,400 a couple of years ago. What was this last set that we?
I couldn't give an accurate number.
We'd have to look. We found a vendor that's supplying the exact same material for less money. So we went with that vendor. A couple of years ago, there was one vendor that was specific to that type of material. And now we found a vendor, and it's actually built, I believe, in Spirit Lake, Iowa. So it's a close vendor that are using the exact same material. So, and it's less. It's more reasonable. So we have switched to them. Any other questions I can entertain right now with council? All right.
Just go
So-
on. Billy, you good? Jackson? Have you got that on the
Well,
shot?
I saved some for Wednesday.
Okay. Sam? Brock?
I'm good.
Okay. So with that, I gotta put my glasses on. So, and there may be some rhetorical questions in here, if you guys wanna if you wanna ask them, say them at the end of the statement, that's totally fine. But I'm going to read a prepared statement, and it is in no disrespect if I am not making eye contact. If I look up and make direct eye contact, it may be as I am adding a thought that's not in this statement. I am here tonight representing the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department, an organization that has been active in our community for 122 years. The subject matter to be addressed with the City of Lennox elected officials is the 2 letters presented to the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department. The letters refer to the city. Quotations I put in there. I believe when you use this term, you are referring to City Hall and or the elected officials or hired employees. My thought is when we use the words the city, it should represent our community, our citizens, our elected officials, those who come into our community to work, and at some point should include our visitors into our community. I realize these 2 letters are signed by the city administrator. However, these statements must represent the majority of our elected officials from meetings and correspondence that they have had. We can continue on this course to banter back and forth on these statements of these 2 letters. We believe there is misinformation in these letters and have the documentation to represent the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department facts. So what is the driving force? What is the agenda or personal objectives that are motivating this subject matter? We believe we are in compliance with the state of South Dakota codified laws, with the exception of smoking in a public building. And I have begun the process of addressing that tonight. And also that will be addressed at our September business meeting. And we believe we are in compliance with the United States Internal Revenue Service. It will take positive, productive correspondence and meetings to bring the subject matter to a workable solution that will benefit the entire city. We, the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department, and the city elected and appointed officials to the Police, Fire, and Ambulance Committee need to meet and negotiate an agreement. We need to clear the facts of these letters and also reach a workable budget from city governance for 2020 for the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department. I have drafted 12 pages of letter I was initially going to use to counterpoint statements of the 2 letters. After careful consideration and reflection, we believe this will be a better start to a positive solution for this subject matter. This decision was realized after a lot of work by both the members of the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department and those representing the governance of the city of Lennox. And this included me speaking directly with 2 of our elected officials. I look in the mirror to see in my reflection both the image and the thoughts. Am I embarrassed? My thought is no. I am proud of my and all the actions and commitment of me and the members of the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department. I'm off script. These shirts we wear typically for 2 events, pride and respect, and they're representing both of them tonight. Typically we wear them at our dance for pride for the members on what they've accomplished and their respect in their positions. Typically we wear them for respect for our members or other members of the fire service at their funerals. Anytime I can entertain questions and meet with our city of Lennox elected officials, I will, in my best of my ability, make it happen. I have had 2 media sources contact me on this subject matter, the 2 letters, and I have respectfully told both of them that I believe in the best interest of the community, we should meet with both the City of Lennox elected officials and the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department at the same time with that media source. To put it into the terms of a baseball analogy, we are up to bat, and you can put either side in this position at the plate. We're not looking for a home run. We do not want to strike out. We want to stay in the game and go the extra innings. But at some point, we must realize the players do get rotated out of this game. So with that being said, is there any other questions that I can entertain? And I do appreciate the time.
I have one question.
Yes,
You may have mentioned in there that you wanted, when you were contacted by the media about those letters, that you wanted someone from the city of Lennox to sit down with them.
that's correct. Together.
Then why did your members post it on social media?
This was after that public document was brought to us, right before our business meeting. And I read that, I presented that to our members, and on my approval, I said if anybody wants to share this, they can. Social media seems to be the latest focal point of sharing information. Now, all that there that we shared was accurate information. That was a signed letter from the city of Lennox. We did not add anything officially or any comments from the Lennox Volunteer Fire Department.
Okay. Well, I'm unclear as to why, if you say you wanna work with us and sit down and have a resolution, why you would just go blast it out on social media. And it looks, I mean, from my perspective, it's like you wanted to get a response and get an angry mob going. When all we're asking for, all we're trying to do up here is have accountability and transparency in every department we have.
Sure. And you gotta understand our side. I was looking through that at opaque glasses. I could not understand why this letter would come to us in this form over an email. And then the very next day, for $6.80, I received a certified letter that I had to sign for. Somebody had to walk to the post office, pay $6.80, and a half block away, I probably was sitting at the fire station. Could have been brought to me. It's small, $6.80 is small, but we talk about every penny. So with that being said, we felt that we were all of a sudden blindsided. We have negotiated in good faith over all the years with the Police, Fire, Ambulance Committee, our budgets. We worked through them.
But we didn't work through this one, Wayne,
And why not?
because you guys blasted it out on social media.
Wrong. The budget was already done. The next meeting that we attended was the budget meeting. And then we were addressed with a second letter at that meeting that evidently all of you must have approved. And you knew about it, is
I've never
correct?
seen anything. I've never seen anything.
But I think Riley's point is after, in terms of a letter being sent, and obviously some disdain and anger and frustration, which certainly is, you can have that response and that's fine, is to like either call Nate or call one of us and say, hey, we need to sit down and discuss this. Because we are angry, as opposed to posting it. Social media is great for a lot of different things. And just in terms of, I would call it, I don't want to necessarily call it a contract negotiation or a budget negotiation, but I think that's kind of what it is. And that's something I think that should be done between either the entire council and some of the folks in the fire department, or some on the council, whether it's a committee and some on your fire department. But that's just my personal opinion.
No, and that's a great comment, and I'm glad you brought that to entertain that with us. Because in past practices, this is what we've done. We have met with the committee, the elected and appointed officials that are on that committee. Now, this year, Nate had asked me, do a line item budget and bring it to me. My comment was no. In the past, we have worked with the Police, Fire, and Ambulance Committee, and I would like to do that again. And that's, from that on, I hadn't heard no more about any meetings. In the past, when I met with Nathan, and we talked about the budget, and the word came back to the council that I was in approval of cutting our budget 40%. That was not factual.
You sent an email that said you were okay with it.
I sent an email saying I was okay with a 40% cut in our
From
budget
last year?
Correct,
Yeah, you did.
for 2019.
Yes.
correct.
I-
This is for the freeze thaw.
For the freeze thaw deal.
And we met with you people the committee,
No.
and if I did that, I do not recall that. And then we met with the committee, and we talked about the budget for the fire department. And we concluded that 75,000 was gonna be a workable budget for 2019. Would you please forward that email back to me, Chad?
Yeah, it says, thanks Nate, I believe that should work okay for us, have a good evening, Lynn. That was the email after the budget from June 13th.
And what's the correspondence prior to that? Does it say?
It just says what
40%?
budgets are, what departments are gonna have a reduction. And then you responded back with, thanks Nate, I believe that should work okay for us, have a good evening.
For cutting 40%.
Yeah.
That's what it says in the email, that we would cut 40%.
31%, $31,000 reduction, Wayne. This gets you to the 75,000 estimate you mentioned Tuesday evening.
Okay, you are correct.
And your response
The
was?
initial one was 40%. Now take 40% from 106. What does that end up for being a budget? And we compromised on removing 31,000 to.
Well, 40% of 106 would be less than 75,000 that you
You
were
are
getting.
correct. That's correct.
So you actually got more than,
No, because that was the initial meeting that we had. He brought that to me and asked if I was okay with that. And I said, no, I'd rather stick with our current budget that we have negotiated. Then I talked with Councilman Poppington the same night before the meeting took place, told him the exact same words. And after that, we had a meeting with the police fire ambulance committee, and then we decided on that 75,000 would be a workable budget for us. So I don't know what the number off the top of my head from 106,000, what the 40% would have been, so you're looking at.
62?
Yeah.
So 75 was better. I mean, you
So-
were okay with it.
75 we are for this year, absolutely, because we understand the very good of the community was the infrastructure in the roads. And the amount of money that we are looking at was gonna be for the health and safety of the firefighters in the city-owned building through that exhaust system. So you're correct there, but except for the fact that initially it was asked for a 40% cut, and we negotiated with seven. You attended that meeting, and you had a baseball game.
I had to go coach a kid.
Oh, coach a kid.
No, I know.
Yeah.
One of the things that I saw come out of this was, just on the correspondence that I was reading through is, Worthing, sits down with the fire department, city, and, the townships, and, twice a year. Is that kind of correct? But I'd like to see us get to the point where we can get there, where we're sitting down with all the players together and just talking about what it's gonna take to carry on and keep our people safe and our firemen safe. So that was one of my goals coming out of this, is that communication and how we get that going. So this is a start.
And I am all open to change. I'm one of the National Fallen Firefighters Association instructors on courage to change, courage to be safe. And with that would come situations just like this. We've changed from 122 years ago. We have changed from 1964, when the fire department was incorporated. And our only surviving person that's name is still on that document is Kenny Saylor. Thankfully, still alive, and thankfully, he's still in our community. So it's changed, it's evolved, and our incorporation papers have stood that ground from 1964 until this year. Through the IRS, we had to make an amendment to our corporation papers with the state of South Dakota. So we're willing for change, but it's got to be a positive change, and we got to start. Now these meetings, I believe when we have these meetings, you have to understand that we would like to address and clear all the misinformation that's out there about the fire department. We're not looking for public apology. We're not looking to apologize for our actions. If I am wrong, I will apologize for my actions. I will stand by my words, or I will explain and apologize for my words. I will do that. What we are looking for is that we start a clear, positive trail so that the fire department and the city of Lennox and the surrounding community can continue. So, and these meetings can get, you can hear my voice. My octane of my voice goes up. And quite frankly,
Well,
like
you're passionate, Wayne,
Quite-
which is, it's
Yeah.
understandable.
quite
Absolutely.
frankly, I told Brock in our conversation, I am not a social person. I do not go and no disrespect by anybody that goes and sits and drinks coffee, eats pie, goes to a facility and has adult beverages, and they talk. That is not me. I'm a man of very few words. But when it comes to the fire service, I can talk a long time.
Passion is good, Wayne, and it serves many things very well. And the fact that you're willing to sit down and talk is even greater, because we all want to move forward and make lives better. It's just, it was one of the things when I was talking with Nate, trying to recruit him, I said, I want us to make things better, to become better, for me to get better every day. And that's what we all have to do, is look at it and make things better, and this is a great start.
It is. And this,
Thanks, Wayne.
this is the most difficult situation I have been put in 36 years. I have held lives of family members in my hands. It has not been this stressful as this has been in the last 13 days.
I
Now,
Sorry. I think most of the guys have been the greatest either, so. But to get together and move forward, I'm all for it.
I just want to point, you guys are all appreciated, all you guys on the crew,
right, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
and just keep up the good work.
And our dance is October 19th, and you all are cordially invited. Mogan's Heroes will be there. So, any other questions of the council? So with that, when Nathan came to Lennox, I welcomed him to Lennox and congratulated him in his position. We need to get positive and get forward and move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
So, I got somebody great.
What do we always do at the end?
Great.
Thank you.
Very good. Asphalt repair project RFP number 1.
I should qualify on the RFP number 1 and the change order number 1 really are the same, one and the same. The RFP is actually an attachment to the change order. Number 1, the RFP is what we send to the contractor to get pricing from them initially, and we attach that to the change order document. So this is the change order that we discussed for the asphalt repair project to add the surge rock in the area in front of Sunshine. You can see the total there was $6,940 to add that work to the contract. That's to add a fabric separator up there. We actually have a deduct on the egg base because we're gonna not use as much egg base in that area as we initially planned. We're gonna substitute it with the surge rock.
So why are you doubling the rock?
We're also going a little deeper. So right now we have a 12-inch section, and we're going to an 18-inch section. So we need a foot of the surge rock and 6 inches of gravel on top of that. Whereas before we had 12 inches of gravel.
One of the things that I was interested in the patching when we said to do it right is I would like to kind of see how it holds up, looking at when we're moving into the future, whether this is the approach to go for the rest of the streets. One of the things that people have asked me is, are we going to patch it in and then tear it all up and replace it? But I'd like, it's kind of a joint thing. I really want us to learn from this expenditure on this patch what works best in that type of soil, but what works best in Lennox.
I mean, with Boynton itself, we had been, Nate and city staff and I, we talked, because Boynton has been a project that you guys have considered in the past about rebuilding. So with these patches that we proposed, we didn't want to put a lot of money into them if we thought we were going to be taking the road out in the future. So we did try to scale those back. That's why it's a little bit more patchwork than when you see some of the other roads. When I got out there to mark the rules with the contractor, that area right in front of Sunshine, in front of Casey's, there was 3 isolated patches, and we could have tried to chop them out of there, but we decided to take the whole thing out. Being that it's against the Highway 17 project, you know, that had a nice seam there, so I think this will, we just wanted to carry that through, I guess, for this stretch. But I know what you mean. We did have that thought process of how much do we really want to put into this particular road, but again, it's your main entrance coming in, we wanted to make sure you had something that helped out.
And I guess what's important to me is that has place has heavy saturation. It does all the time. We've got heavy flow going through there. The impact that has on the road, but what are we going to learn from putting this patch in that will help us make correct decisions in the future? Because part of my thinking is we're going to do it right, but I also want to learn what we think is right and how much impact that has and what that will mean to us when we start bidding out projects in the future. What are we going to learn from this patch to carry us forward?
Well, I know if we do build Boynton in the future, we better plan on some surgery.
Well, it's surge rock and concrete, right?
Yeah, actual asphalt helps.
Concrete.
Have you looked to see if we have enough, big enough culvert for like in the spring when that?
No, that culvert's undersized still. And then you get overtopping there. If you ever rebuilt one that, maybe you probably upsize that.
Because that's gotta be hard on that road every spring.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. One of the things we're looking at, when we, quite honestly, we'll intend to apply for the state transportation grants on both, on Boynton, as long as we can until we get it. One of the things that I think needs to go along with that is the hazard mitigation grant to fix the drainage along the entire length of Boynton. Whether it's the paved surface or the gravel surface, there simply is not enough done on that street to move water where it needs to go. So I think drainage work, in addition to a street project there in the future, would benefit everybody greatly.
So when they build the meadow or whatever it is.
Countryside.
Countryside. Which way we flow in the water? Are we gonna dump it to the west or are we going to the east?
Half of it goes to the west, maybe not quite half, probably less than half goes to the west. The rest of it goes towards the east, towards that ditch that goes along the water tower, between the water tower and Sunshine.
Have you ever seen that when we get a snow melt?
I'm sure there's a lot of water.
It's 2 feet above Gomes driveway.
Yep, and that's where the water goes now.
But we're looking to maybe, some of that might be mitigated by this up there. If we
So there's gonna be
direct the
holding
flow
ponds,
other places,
That's all coming there now.
it's all going there now. But if you put storm sewer and redirect where that's gonna go, that may mitigate.
Yeah, as far as, I don't know if we need to get into.
Right, I'm sorry.
That's, that's generally the lay of the land for that.
And make a motion to approve the change order.
So moved by, second by Sam. First one's Chad Wolf.
May I ask for an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Include the RFP.
Oh, yes, to include the RFP.
Is that the same on your second? All right. Start out with Chad Riley. Aye. Jackson.
All right.
Sam. Aye. Brock.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Parking. Just wait. Really, quite honestly, I don't allow that to go on. You can ask the administrator of that afterwards. Hate to do it to you.
Oh, that's fine, I just
All
need to
right.
know.
Park and Rec Board appointments. My understanding is that Kathy Fonderson and Jason Foss are okay with being appointed again. And I think they're appropriate, so I would therefore appoint Kathy and Jason pending your approval.
Kathy who?
For 2 years?
Cassie.
Bondison.
Yep.
Cassandra, I think is her.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So those are the two that are up.
Yes.
And that's a 2-year term?
It is a 3-year term. We don't have a great listing of terms. We did go over that last night at the park board meeting, and Ms. Mauer was kind of her recollection with me. So we weren't positive that Jason Foss is up this year, but he was first appointed in 2013, which would make 2019 his term.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Chad Riley, second by Sam, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Yes, we still have some cleanup on the appointment, please.
Aren't there some
Motion
two-year
carried.
terms, some three-year terms?
Not that I found. We need to go back and look through
First
some
there was.
older minutes and take a look.
First there was, and then it got switched,
Yeah,
and just rotating them. Okay.
yeah, I think what I would like to look at is staggering, and we can talk again about the 2 year versus 3 year.
I think it is staggered, but I think at first it was like maybe even a 1 year, 2 year.
The very first year, I think there was 3 different, a 1, a 2, and a 3.
Yes.
Kind of rotated.
Some
To get that
rotated.
staggered in there.
Unfortunately, over the years, there hasn't been, in my mind, sufficient record keeping a great record of whose term started when and when it's up, so. I know that there were some appointed last year and earlier this year that we will have to, I think in 2022, we have to appoint 4 or 5 members.
Right.
If they're all still there at that point.
Okay. Garbage hauler license application.
Thank you, Mayor. We received an application from a third commercial garbage hauler. Last month, we received an application from AOK Sanitary Service in Sioux Falls. The application included the required fees and was completed according to the requirements of our revised municipal ordinances, Chapter 3.03. I would recommend a motion approving the license for AOK Sanitary Service. Jesse DeWitt?
Yep.
Hey, not bad. From AOK is here tonight as well.
Yep. Like you said, Jesse with AOK Sanitary, I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
What size truck do you,
The majority of our trucks range anywhere from, 20,000 tear to 30,000, but the trucks that will be coming through here are about 23,000 tear weight.
The lighter they can be, the better for us.
I know. It's the same trucks that we run through Parker and Centerville and all the surrounding communities right out here, so.
And right now, do we have two others that are in town?
That's correct.
But, did you check our ordinance? Do we only, issue 2? Otherwise, we're gonna have to change that.
I do not believe we have anything in our ordinance that says anything about you.
I thought one time there was.
When we look at license required, 3.0301 requires an applicant to have a license, or excuse me, requires a commercial hauler to have a license. Sets the license fee, what must be filed with the application. It must be approved by the city council, as well as the license fee rate approved by city council.
I know what you're talking about, but you gotta go by what's written, not what you got.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Sam and Brock. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
Aye, and the only reason I am opposing to that is I thought for somewhere there's in our ordinances that says they're only an issue 2, so, I'm sorry.
Nope. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
How soon do you, can I ask another question? When are you gonna start?
The reason that we looked into this is because I've had a sudden rash of people moving to Lennox, out of Sioux Falls, which is great for you guys. And they keep saying, do you service Lennox? And I keep telling them no. So I thought, why not? And I have had a handful of people from Lennox call and say, hey, do you haul Lennox? And I keep saying no. So I thought, why not? So.
Are you gonna send out some educational,
Flyers or something?
Typically, I don't like to do that, especially when I'm competing against local haulers. I don't like to knock on people's doors. So I'll probably just start with, the people of my own that are moving out here. They see my trucks and my cans show up, and if they want to call me, great. I don't like to pound on people's doors. So.
do you have like incentive programs? Do you also do, recycle and
Yep, we do everything like the majority of the companies, because we all operate out of Sioux Falls too, and we follow the same ordinances, so we have recycling. We do residential, commercial, and roll-offs, so construction debris and all that stuff, so. Yeah, the incentive, the only incentive we have is 20% off your first year, and we do that for every new customer, so.
And just for me and for other people who always are interested in what your rates are.
The 65 gallon, which is the most,
Oh.
oh yeah, the packet. Yep, I provided everything to the city, maybe even a little more than was asked, just because of what I'm used to for Sioux Falls, and for some of the other places, but like 28 or 65 gallon, which is the most common, is $28.50 a month, and then we do $3 back a month for e-bill and things like that. So we do have little incentives like that, but for the most part, we find we're very competitive. And
What day do you pick up garbage on?
I believe it would be on Tuesdays out here. That's when we're doing all the rest. We'd have to, if it got too large, we would have to figure out, because right now we have 2 guys coming out here on Tuesday. One of them would just swing through here on the way, but if enough people signed up, we'd have to reevaluate days, maybe multiple days.
Just so you know, you just did a commercial.
That's great.
You're on camera, so.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, ordinance 599 fiscal year 2020 appropriations.
Mayor and council, this is in front of you, is also placed on the desk and back. We did not have this wrapped up by the time the agenda was finished last week, so we provided it with copies, hard copies here as the law allows. This ordinance sets certain spending levels, as you see, for every category. It doesn't look exactly like the spreadsheet you would have seen last month's. Instead, it breaks it down into general categories of general government, public safety, public works, health and welfare, those types of things, as well as into the different funds. The only change that you'll see on this budget as opposed to the last budget is on the first page under public safety. Fire was moved up to 71,500. That's the amount that they are currently budgeted for this year after the budget reduction we did back in, I believe it was June. It was suggested by one member of the council. I was able to move a few things around, expense and revenue-wise, to make that happen. And the budget still balances out to a zero balance at the end of the day for general fund. That being said, it is, we just had our meeting last week to review this, and if there's additional time needed, we do have that time. I have heard some concern about time restrictions here and the possibility to table this until a later meeting, schedule a special meeting. I don't think that's an issue. We do have to have 5 days between each reading of the ordinance, just like any other ordinance. So as long as we have that done prior to the last day of the month, let's give Denise at least a day or two prior to a couple of days before the end of the month, we'd still be able to meet the budget deadlines for getting everything certified to the county.
Well, I would recommend table this until Monday, just so we can have meeting time with the fire department, and then we can discuss it more. Some of us can chew on it a little more for another week. And that's just, I make a motion.
I would second that.
I have a motion and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Both same sign. It's tabled.
I will send an email around and make sure we got a good date for a forum. But for now, I would plan on next week, Monday, the 16th.
Resolution 2019 9-9-01, special maintenance fee.
Thank you, Mayor. This issue comes to us following the Lennox 2035 presentation from a few weeks ago. We did have some discussion at that meeting about creation of a special maintenance fee that is authorized by state law. So last month I presented that plan. I was focused on rebuilding and replacing infrastructure throughout town. whether that's streets, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water infrastructure, whatever it might be. The currently available fund for this is Fund 212, or second penny, which is about $300,000 per year in sales tax revenue. Of that, approximately $70,000 is budgeted to dedicate as a operating transfer to cover the loss from the ambulance, although in most years that's around 30, leaving approximately $230,000 for street maintenance, such as sealing, but also for reconstruction activities. That may seem to be a substantial amount of funding for new streets each year, but it really doesn't stretch very far. If you look back at our 2019 asphalt repairs, that's approximately 9 city blocks of pavement. That's going to run us approximately $450,000. I would bet that using that funding from 212, we'd only get about 4 blocks per year replaced. That again does not include increasing the appropriation for sealing and performing regular maintenance on those streets. It also does not include the addition of curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Unlike a lot of other communities, we don't experience strong sales tax revenues. Even similar communities, even similarly sized bedroom communities experience higher sales tax receipts. One of the towns I looked at was Volga. Population is about 1,800, about 10 minutes west of Brookings. We would consider Brookings a micropolitan area, so it's not certainly not like Sioux Falls, but it is still a regional draw. The sales tax receipts in Volga exceeded $500,000 in 2018, whereas ours don't even come close to that in the second penny. As more and more shoppers drive to Sioux Falls for retail needs, that lack of revenue directly impacts the quality of our streets. In order to make up for that shortfall, we've got to put in place some kind of financing option for rebuilding infrastructure. The most readily available method to do so is through a special maintenance fee. Many local towns have instituted the fee in recent years to invest in infrastructure. It's assessed to every property owner in Lennox based on linear feet abutting public streets. The fees collected from taxpayers will be restricted only for use on public infrastructure, with no funding going to fund general operations of the city. If I remember right, in my presentation earlier, I suggested a fee of $2.50 per linear foot. I think going to $2 per foot would get us approximately 169,000 feet. It's going to get us north of $330,000 per year in funding for infrastructure replacement and rehab. That would start being collected in 2020. We have to have the assessment list to the county by November 1st. So what we would do is use that first year's worth of funding to establish a reserve balance for the fund, and then begin using the fund in 2021 on projects based on an infrastructure assessment. I think it's important to note that we don't really know yet what that total amount of linear feet is on that fee. The 16-mile estimate is based on earlier discussions city engineer and I had on a rough estimate of the street miles in Lennox. I would also point out that the fee is higher than the fee collected in other nearby towns and cities. I wrote down in the memo just what I was able to get from those city websites and what they've done on their resolutions. I believe Harrisburg will be increasing theirs, so I wasn't able to confirm that. They're currently at 165. The highest on this list is 175. So we are starting out higher than other communities. That being said, I would prefer to start with a higher rate and lower it in future years rather than having continually add to that tax burden for property owners. I would also say that if the fee collects substantially more revenue than what we intended, City Council may wish to lower that fee in the future. If we do go with the 16 miles, one of the original dollar amounts I threw out there was $200,000 to $250,000. Would go a long way in helping. We could certainly lower that, but one of the things that we have to figure in is, things like corner lots, churches, schools, are those going to be assessed the same as every other property? Anybody that may own a corner lot would see kind of a double whammy there. On special assessments, we do grant them a credit of 75 feet for a corner lot. So it would help them certainly if we were to do something along those lines. So this resolution is out for discussion. It's a first stab at getting something moving. But if the council feels that sort of changes should be made, I think now is a good time to have that discussion.
Well, we know from a survey, the streets are the number one issue, or the lack thereof. And I think we as a council need to tell a story here about if we stay on track to where we're at now. And sure, as Lennox grows, I mean, I hope we can bring in more commercial industry, that's also gonna help. But if we stay on the pace we are now, we continue to fall farther and farther behind. And we're not gonna catch up. Now, what the linear footage, the $2 is probably a little steep in my opinion. We also are gonna have issues with the way we finance some of these major projects, in which somebody has had to pay their assessment already in full, some $16,000, and now they're gonna get a hit with a $2 assessment on their linear footage for other people's properties, obviously. And that's gonna, but again, we can't ignore it. I think there has to be a healthy discussion about it. And if we want newer streets and so on and so forth, this is how we're gonna get there. And give the people of Lennox the option. Because I think to do the same, what we're doing is, obviously, it hasn't worked. I mean, we're here, right? And you know the number of streets that are poor. But then you go to the other end of the spectrum, like if we did this over a 5-year period, like T did it, Hartford did it, they're beautiful roads in those communities, but obviously it's gonna cost you some money. Or you put together a 10 to 15-year plan where we hope by year X, all the streets in Lennox have new curb gutter sidewalk, but.
And some of those towns have done that with special assessments on all of them, I believe. Some of them have done a share approach to that. I think how that progresses depends on the community and where they're at in terms of their desire for better infrastructure and balancing it with, a responsible taxpayer burden.
Couple things. Countryside, how much is that gonna add to the tax base on this? And I don't need these answers now, but it's something I'm looking at.
I would assume those
We
houses
need
would
to
be
look
assessed.
and show the people, before we do this, what I'd like to see is have a plan. If we're gonna do this, what is our plan, how are we gonna apply it, when is it gonna go down? And so they can start to see, we aren't just talking about something that what do you do, because we've done it, it's been done. It's, they need to know out there, this amount of dollars is gonna get us, this amount of streets done, this is our plan that we're gonna do, this is how we're going to do it, and even having it laid out in the plan of which roads are gonna be done, but just so that they can see there is a plan, we have to commit to that plan, show that plan, and do that plan. So if we're gonna add on this linear street tax, which I'm not opposed to, but what I do need to have, what I do want to have happen is the people out there know what it's gonna do with their money, how it's gonna be pursued. We've got some good plans in here on the 2035 plan, but they need to see this, and we have to commit to follow this plan, showing that we got a plan, how it's going to be implemented, giving the people benchmarks so they can see it's being done. And I think that will help with the plan. But we need to have, before we do this, to show the people what we're going to be doing with their money. That's just my feeling.
Well, I look at this list, Nate, and there's towns we know are assessing this that aren't even on this list, right?
Yeah.
Mitch can probably speak to this, anybody has experience in this. Our streets are not great, but obviously we're not alone trying to find a solution to remedy this problem. Is this gonna fix it all? No, it's not. I agree with what Tracy said, I agree with what Brock said, but I would like to add that we need to be, however, if this is approved in whatever form it's approved in, I think we also need to be very diligent and have a plan with how we are going to assess our citizens consistently going forward, not jumping from funding package to funding package to funding package, because somebody thought that was the right thing to do at the time. It's been frustrating for everybody. I know Brock and I have discussed it at length over this last one. It was like, I was beating my head against the wall going home at night. It's like, how does this happen? So
Staff would agree with that
Yes.
assertion.
There just needs to, I mean, on full-on projects, there just needs to be a formula. Part of it's gonna be grant funded possibly, part of it's gonna be cash, part of it's gonna be special assessment, part of it may be rate. But with Central Basin 1 and South Main and Central Basin 2 and 3, like I've said before, and we've got a chart, you can see the chart, it is all over the board, and that just doesn't make sense.
And it's going back, it's not just the last 3 years,
Right,
it's going
right.
back 20, 30 years.
What is the lifespan on an asphalt road? Life expectancy?
Depends on how long they take care of it.
Yeah, if it's properly maintained in 20 to 30 years. That's putting seal coats down every 7 years, potentially mill and overlay after 20 years. That's generally.
That's with a grade, subgrade.
And that's the last
I mean,
one.
that's a good, right, that's a good subgrade underneath and whatnot too.
Because again, you've got streets that, which I think are the lowest hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit is gravel streets. We've got one on Cedar. We've got one on, what's the other one block east of Main? Not Cherry. Poplar. There's a block there. It's got sidewalk that is good. It's got a couple homes on it that are newer, and it's got curb and gutter. All you gotta do is put asphalt down there. And it has a huge improvement, okay? That's the lowest hanging fruit. Well, then you get to these roads that are absolutely in shambles. Say, okay, we're gonna put lipstick on a pig and fix the top, which looks great, but then the question is, the water and sewer beneath it, if that's a problem, we need to know that, and then that becomes all, a more expensive fix. And it's kind of all overboard. But I think a plan in terms of how we would go about doing this, and even identifying the streets as how we would move through this over a decade maybe, would be beneficial.
Some of what I'm hearing is, having more out there publicly in terms of how we're going to assess our infrastructure officially, how we're gonna grade, blocks of street, how we're gonna grade, feet of storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water lines, so on and so forth.
Sidewalks.
Yeah, sidewalks included. So I guess that's some of the feedback I'm hearing, and that's certainly something we can put together. I'm not gonna say that there's a rush, because there's no reason we can't do this later. If we don't do it before November 1st, we have to wait a year to collect.
Right.
Again, that can be fine. That does give us a year to help plan a little bit better and refine those plans after we assess a little closer.
I think for me, the main thing is, I think Brock touched upon it, is a complex assessment, but thorough, of our streets, why we're gonna go after, what streets we're gonna go after, show the people that we've done our due diligence and looking underneath them, assessing them. Today we talked about we know that the skin of the street isn't always the main problem, it's what's underneath that. And we need to show that we're looking at that, making competent assessments, and that's gonna be, to me, the most important part, is sharing that information with the people. Looking at the thickness of the streets, and why do we do that? Just so they can know what we're looking at and why we're doing it. Because I get asked that question a lot, and probably Lonnie do, like, why did you choose, even on Central Basin, we tried to get it out there, they go, why did you do that? So we need to show out the communication. We know why we did it. There's assessments done, it was looked at, and it was a problem area, but we just gotta get that out there.
Does there have to be 2 readings of this, Nate?
There is not, no.
There does not for a resolution?
Not for a resolution.
I guess my thoughts on it would be, from what I'm hearing from others, is it's not necessarily a bad idea. Maybe we just need to ponder on it, get some more information, and see what makes sense.
And I kind of batted around the idea of, without the time constraint, I think having a public forum for people to ask questions on something like this could be really helpful.
Absolutely.
So they can take a look at some of the things that Mitch and I have taken a look at, Jeremy's taken a look at, and the things that we've been able to assess thus far. And talk a little bit more about what questions people might have about this, and how is it assessed? Who does it apply to? Questions around corner lots, those kinds of things. I'm certainly not dead set on doing this tonight or even this year. But not doing it before November certainly sets us back about a year in terms of funding.
Can we table this?
I'd make a motion to table it.
Second by Sam. All in favor? What?
Let me make one point, I don't know if it was discussed, but you have to set this rate every year.
Every year, yes.
Right,
Right.
something that comes on your agenda every year.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right,
Who's the second?
Thank you.
Chad.
You were first?
I was second.
Motion.
Oh, you second.
Got it.
W and I. Once again, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, special event application, Lennox High School.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
Just one clarification real quick since we have the chief here.
Oh, pardon me, I missed it.
The parade route for the high school.
Homecoming parade.
That chief.
You're up. Ambulance is okay with it, I assume PD's okay with it. And
Yeah.
I would even assume that ambulance and some of you guys might actually be in the parade, so. But it will include street closures, it's the same parade route that we used for the 4th of July.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Done. All right. Anything on the executive session?
We do have 2 items under executive session to review communication from legal counsel.
Okay. I need,
Motion to adjourn the session.
Motion adjourned.
I second the motion for executive session.
thank you.
Oh,
None of you are confused. Let's go on our brief protocol. Camera?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest to actually do a exec session in my office, because if we turn the camera off, that ends the broadcast. It ends the video completely, we turn it off. So if we go in my office, and the video can keep running, that's not too easy.
Are we gonna be in there very long?
Well, this is good. I'm just waiting on this going on, so, wait for you guys to get the more stuff to do. We can all hear you. Yeah. Sorry, and I'm not ready for the reasons why. Yeah, we can serve. One minute is just, oh, the spring water.
Some exercise techniques.
Yes. Well, that's good, get my steps in,
Yes.
yeah.
As there's no action to be taken after executive session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
John, Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.
Resolution is made by.
Quit stealing my pen.
You talked to Gary lately?
I had.
Oh.
Yeah.
See Barb's heading down.
Oh, special maintenance fee, is that your motion?
You motioned it, right?
Table special maintenance fee.
Yes.
And then who seconded?
What a deal.
I'll have to look at this, Chad, but I think.
I think it's consistent, because I was just looking at, I was just putting in utilities today into my little magical
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Now, it sounds like that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
we can take a look at it now if you want. I just been pulling up on my spreadsheet on my laptop.
Well,
I don't
and
have to
I'm
be
thinking